Hey, it's your boy Philip Cook here. For those who don't know me, I'm a regular on the Xplane Facebook page. I have tons of videos that I've posted, some in VR, some in my regular display. I'm a regular on the virtual airlines, and I love getting great video and having great performance out of my machine. So, what I wanted to talk about today was one of the tricks that I found out messing with the Oculus Rift in order to get better VR performance. So my system, I run a GTX 9700K, 48 gigs of RAM, and a 1080 Ti. So I run two monitors. I have a 1080p monitor that this one is on right now, and I have a 4K monitor. 4K is my main display. The 1080p is I kind of use as my Xplane display because I predominantly fly in VR. I don't really do that much flying on the monitor. So after messing with these settings, I was able to get really smooth, rock solid, steady frames. I know a lot of people still having issues messing with Vulkan and getting it stable. First, as far as overall stability goes, still having that crash when you try to get back into VR using the Oculus Rift more than one times on the same flight. What I find is it like a lot of times I would take off in VR and then do the flight in on the monitor and then hop back into VR. Sometimes for some reason I get a crash. Hopefully they'll fix this in the future soon. But now I just keep it in VR all the time, and I have pop-ups and all that stuff. I've got a tablet that runs all my other good stuff to help me get through the flight in VR the whole time. So first thing I did is I changed my control panel settings. Now, if you're running the monitor or you're running VR, you should first go to your NVIDIA control panels if you're using a NVIDIA graphic card. I don't know if you're using an AMD, if they have something similar, but I wouldn't be surprised. So the first thing I did is I went to Manage 3D Settings on our NVIDIA control panel, and for my global settings, I went ahead and I turned on thread optimization. I changed make sure the texture filtering is on quality. Um, the FXAA is on, and my ambient occlusion is on performance. And that was about it. You can mess with a couple other settings, see if you get better performance. It's kind of a really how your system works. Sometimes you'll get good performance, sometimes you won't. Oh, and make sure power management mode is on. Prefer maximum performance. Next thing I did is if you're not running Oculus Tray Tool, you should definitely run it. It's a free tool. It helps a lot. So when OpenGL was running, to get better performance in VR and better visuals, you would turn down the anti-aliasing as far as you could get in Xplane and then turn up your super sampling, your default super sampling. What I found when running Vulkan and Mantle is turn down the super sampling. I set it to 0, and I was able to crank up the anti-aliasing and not lose much performance, or not lose much performance at all in my most demanding area. So one of my most demanding areas is LAX. I have level 17 orthos. I have LAX HD by Mr. X, and you know I get a rock solid 24 to 34 frames in VR with Active Sky and Traffic Global. So that's what I do there. All I basically did here was I just turned the default super sampling to 0. Yeah, and then everything else I pretty much kept the same. I didn't really change anything there. So that's the main thing I did. And then after that, I can show you my settings. Bear with. with me. You guys know this shit takes a minute now to load. I run all my stuff on SSDs. I run all my sceneries on SSD, Xplanes on an SSD. So load time isn't terrible. But these are the settings I run. So I run visual effects on HDR SSO. Honestly, you can run it on HDR, high HDR, but for my system, I haven't really seen a difference between high HDR and maximum. Because after messing around with in VR, it literally did little to no um, performance gain or loss for me. It may be different for your system, so play with that. Texture quality, just left it on maximum. You know, it used to be with OpenGL that ate up a lot of memory. Now it's been optimized pretty well. I keep it on maximum. And I haven't really seen much of a difference or drop in performance for my video card. Now, I run 2x SAA, FXAA for VR. Sometimes I can get 4x SAA, but in my highest demand areas, I find 2x SAA gets me a stable around 30 frames per second, and then default scenery or non-ortho areas, this will get me like 40. This will get me like easily at 50 frames per second at night. So I've even gotten up to like 80 frames per second. If I'm replaying and I want to get really high quality, then I'm just using the display, I'll go up to 4x SAA, and this will get me like a stable 40-50 frames per second on most replays in most areas. But for VR, I just keep it on 2 times SAA plus FXAA. With the other settings, it seems to help me a lot. World objects really depends on your CPU. I keep mine on maximum, and in my most demanding areas, that keeps me at no less than around 24 frames, 30 frames per second. But if you're really struggling and with your processor, this is going to be your biggest performance hit right here. Reflections. Now, reflections, the biggest performance hit is between the 2 mediums. If you keep it on the lower medium, I find that gets you the better performance with still some nice reflections. If you go to higher medium, I don't know what the difference is, but it gives you a significant performance hit, especially in VR. I found that keeping it on the low medium is best, and also I've been getting this these weird warped reflections in VR when you go to the high medium and up. But I haven't seen a major performance difference for me. Typically it'll drop maybe like 4 frames if I go above into like high or maximum. So I just keep it on medium just to keep it nice and stable in my high demand areas. Draw Park Aircraft I have on, and obviously Vulkan I have on. So that helps a lot right there. And I just keep it on default, but as you can see, I keep it at like 1920 by 1080. I don't know why 1440 is even available. The screen only does 1080. I keep VSync on. You can disable it. It might give you a few more frames, but for me, I just keep it on because, like I said, I do everything in VR. So those are my settings, and I get some great results with those settings. I run cloud art, active sky, traffic global. I run a lot of ortho, in the areas that I fly, and I get really great performance. So to give you an example here, I've got a video that I just did earlier, and this was LAX at night. I won't play the whole thing here. And all my jaggedy movements here, but you can see it runs pretty smoothly. You don't see too much artifacting with the controller, and this is at my heaviest area with literally all of Southern California and Northern California. I either have level 17 orthos and I have the ORBX NorCal, and this is all at max
connected and bypassed and
world
inserted.
objects.
Release part.
So you can see here. Let's see here. Fast forward it here. Yeah, Traffic Global for some reason still hasn't been fully compatible. So for some reason, some of them work, but then I'll get these blank planes. Hopefully they'll fix that soon as well. But you can see here,
on runway,
this is taking off from
left.
LAX. Works pretty well, pretty smooth. Turn down video audio here so you can hear me better without too much noise. And you may see a hiccup here or there, and honestly the hiccups seem to happen with OBS. You know, I use OBS to record, and sometimes I'll get hiccups when recording, but when I'm playing, I don't get any of that, especially in 4K. When I try to record with 4K on OBS, it's a mess for some reason. It will just completely start getting jaggedy here and there. So if I'm doing 4K, sometimes I like to do whatchamacallit, I like to do the shadow play. The NVIDIA recorder seems to do the best job. But as you can see here, I'm getting rock solid smoothness. You know, see, it's kind of flash here, but you can see with all this environment and all that good stuff. I'll see if I can pause it. See, I'm getting around 29-30 frames per second. But as you can see here, it looks pretty good. You know, in game it looks amazing, especially if you're using Rift S. I'm sure it'd be even easier to get better frames with the CV1. And it might even work with your other, what they call it, the reverb or any of those HTC vibes. But as you can see here, it's super smooth. And there's a lot of detail going on right here. Let's see here. Yeah, super smooth. Smoother than, you know, when I was working with OpenGL. And at the end of the video here, you can see running the same settings. So these are my optimal settings. Maybe this will help you guys. It helped me a lot. You can play around with it. If you're not running the Oculus Tray tool and you have a Rift, definitely get the Tray tool and turn down that super sampling and turn up that anti-aliasing. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop me a note. I'll post this on Xplane and I'll post it on the VR Aviators page, and hopefully this will help you out, and hopefully, you know, they'll keep messing with Vulkan and we'll get even better results. You know, hopefully they'll get rid of those crashes soon. You know, stability isn't quite there yet, but honestly I just can't see myself going back to OpenGL after this. It's just so much better being in Mantle and Vulkan. It just works so much better. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, leave any comments. If you've found a setting that works better for you, let me know. You know, maybe there's something else I can tweak. You know, and I'm running, I wouldn't even say the most robust system, but I would say definitely a higher end system. I don't have like a 2080 Ti or any of that stuff. And you can get your hands on a 1080 Ti pretty inexpensively now. You can definitely get your hands on a used one for as little as $350. So, you know, keep an eye out for those. I definitely would get a 1080 Ti before I would get a 2080. So yeah, talk to you guys later.